In creating this menu, I was probably most excited getting to utilise such a lovely whiskey and the challenges that it posed in creating a menu to be matched with something that has such strong flavours but also so many subtle nuances about it, that it was very challenging but also something that I really enjoy doing. The whiskies all sort of have their own different characteristics with an underlying tone of honey. Obviously the cask maturation that they go through brings out different flavours. Our first course, the leek and nori terrine, with our apple melon and a buttermilk that's been infused with hay, goes really well with the 12-year-old. The sweetness of the melon and the apple really complement the honey characteristics of that whiskey, which are quite prominent, whereas the leek and the nori add that sort of savoury undertone, and then the hay is an underlying flavour I found in the whiskey myself. So I wanted to incorporate that into the menu. So it's a very light infusion that gives you a subtle undertone towards the end of the meal. The next course is our miso and vanilla cured ocean trout. So that gets a miso, salt, vanilla, sugar, a few different aromatics and citrus. We cure that for about an hour. We pat it, rub it all off, clean it up, and then that's confit off in some oil before we char it up. And then that is going with a spinach puree, crispy ocean trout skin, a saffron rui, and candied kumquats. This sort of appealed to me in a sense that the miso and the vanilla carry a nice depth and weight, and the candied kumquats add a sort of sweet, bitter flavour to it, which really sort of came out in it, being aged in rum casks with strong flavours that did carry through. There was always honey at the end, but you did get some sort of orangey tones to it, and vanilla was also mixed amongst it. For our third course, we're using Shire Wagyu beef. We just seal off in a pan, and then lightly finish off with butter and some aromats. It's served with some poached rhubarb, a sauce bordelaise, warrigal greens, some watercress. And I went down this path because the 16-year-old has some really strong, deep flavours that really sort of complement the beef. And being the French oak, I sort of wanted to play on to the French theme a little bit more, which is why I'm utilising sauce bordelaise and a few more traditional methods. The rhubarb lends a sort of sweet sour note to it. Because the whiskey's so strong, I don't want it to overpower the dish. So I've used a little bit more natural acids to cut through that whiskey and let the dish still complement it instead of one or the other overpowering each other. So the fourth course I was quite excited about because I got to try the 21-year-old whiskey. It is a lovely bottle. I found it had some really beautiful, dark, rich notes, but it also still carried that traditional sweetness that they looked for in the Balvenie, that honey. So through that, banana was one characteristic, and chocolate sort of really came out to me. So we're doing a nice caramelized banana mousse, and then chocolate mousse, and then a smoked milk ice cream, because it had a little bit more of that sort of smokiness in it. And I sort of didn't want any harder textures with it, because it's such a smooth, beautiful scotch that I wanted the dessert to sort of complement its flavours but also complement the texture at the same time. And then our final course, our cheese course, I got a lovely piece of Rousseur Brie, and we've obviously cut it open, filled it with truffles, being matched with Week of Peat, which is a special whiskey they do at Balvenie, where they bring in peat water and they make a more traditional sort of style of whiskey in that really smoky, really heavy, strong whiskey that some people generally find offensive and others love. So I decided to pair it with some really strong flavours, in the sense of like truffle is really strong and the brie has a nice subtle but it's still very forward in its flavour. Fig jam for the sweetness of it, and then I've used malted barley because it sort of adds a little bit of a textural element, but it has an underlying tone being a key element of what they use in the whiskey making process itself.